because biology is reacting with biology, it's a much more tuned solution to what you're needing.
Hey, Karl, how's it going?
So good, Erum. Welcome to June, and listeners, welcome to the Grow Everything podcast. How did you kick off your June, Erum?
I kicked it off with my in-laws coming to town from India, which has been quite the treat. They're very awesome people. My husband's dad is the classic dad. He has lots of dad jokes. He laughs at all his jokes too, but he's awesome. He's also a doctor, so you got to love that. And it's been great. How about you? How is June kicking off for you?
Well, I mean, for those of you who are in New York, June has kicked off very cold. Last week of May was very rainy. I did a lot of driving and a lot of traveling. I was in Richmond, I was in San Jose, I was in Ithaca, I was in upstate New York. It's a lot for me. And then at the same time, we're juggling multiple multinational clients and startups. So we had a very, very busy May. And I think June is going to be even busier. So I'm excited for what's ahead of us, not just on this episode of the Grow Everything podcast, but also what's ahead of us this June.
So what's been going on, Karl? There's been a lot of exciting things happening. I'm just trying to make sense of it all. But what has come across your desk lately?
So I'm trying to avoid being too political, though everything is political. But I think the latest, most exciting thing that I've seen just came out as we're recording this podcast. And the question asked in Nature Space, which I didn't even realize that Nature had a magazine called Space, Erika De Benedictis, who has been on the podcast and who we just saw at Symbio Beta, asks, should we terraform Mars? What do you think, Erum?
Oh, I mean, for listeners that have listened before, you will know that my answer is yes. Of course, it's part of our desire as a species to spread across the galaxy as far as we can, go where no organism has gone before. It's not just humans, but representing all life. Why not? I mean, the thing is, we explore, it's in our nature. And I think there's a lot to be learned in this exploration. Anytime we explore something, we build great things that come off of that exploration, like ships and electricity and telephones. And all of that is because we've spread around the world. So what happens when we spread to another planet? But what about you? What do you think? Should we terraform Mars?
Yeah, I mean, I loved waking up to this article and seeing Erika as the lead author on it. It's got some great little sidebars. One is a diagram that shows present-day extremophiles in Mars-like conditions. And it talks about 4 extremophiles or bacteria that live under extreme conditions here on Earth and how they could live on Mars. And then there's another sidebar that's about Martian soil, which is something that Erika talked about in detail when she appeared on the podcast. So long story short, I think, yes, we should terraform Mars. It will take a very long time. But given our ability to get more things into space cheaper and our increasing knowledge of synthetic biology, I think that it's an inevitability. Whether it happens late this century or sometime in the next, I think we will be terraforming Mars. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and it's very beautiful. I saw, so there's this documentary, I'll put it in the show notes, but I think it's just called like Mars and Exploration. And there's a satellite that's keeping tabs around Mars. And they made these recreations or simulations of what it looks like. They generated these landscapes of Mars, and they're very different. We have different landscapes on Earth. So it looked beautiful. It wasn't like cinematography that they have a whole team on Mars right now, but the way that they showcased it on this documentary, it looked real. And you're like, wow, I definitely want to see that landscape. Not all red.
Yeah. It's also interesting because I didn't realize it, but last week I read a book called Mars Bound by the science fiction author Joe Haldeman, who's a really deep thinker. I mean, he's most famous for these books. I think it's called Forever War, which I read a long, long time ago, but I picked up this book, Mars Bound, and it's the first in a series, and it talks about a teenage girl and her family going to Mars for a short stint, and there's Martians, and then there's others from across the galaxy. And I thought it was just coincidental. I hadn't even realized I read it until you were talking about going to Mars and seeing this documentary. And then I'm thinking about Erika and her paper. So Mars is on our mind on one level. On another level, bringing it closer to home, while I was in the gym this weekend, I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast. We do listen to a fair amount of podcasts. And specifically, because you recommended it, I was listening to the Joe Rogan interview with Colossal's Ben Lamb. That is an incredible interview.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to be a part of the conversation, but I didn't need to. It reminded me to listen to Joe Rogan more. I mean, the reason I listened to it because I wanted to know what Ben Lamb was going to talk about. And he talked about some interesting things. One of the things that I found super interesting was this idea of speciation and how speciation is a construct, a human construct.
Yeah.
I think we're both a little late to the game on this episode because I think it came out several weeks ago. But I think this is part of the whole direwolf reveal, that whole press campaign after the cover of Time magazine. There was a lot of controversy. It's like, well, that's not actually a direwolf. They used some genes and that may have been similar to when the direwolf was around, but it's not the actual genome of a direwolf. But then Ben Lamb was like, well, what is a genome? Genes transfer and change. And we as a scientific community have created this taxonomy of speciation and trying to bucket things, but it's really hard because it's not black and white, it's a lot of gray. And if it walks like a duck, sounds like a duck, is it a duck? It was so interesting, that perspective. But then it got crazy. What about you? What are your thoughts on the speciation topic and otherwise?
I mean, again, species are a human construct. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I learned from that particular part of the conversation was this idea that polar bears and grizzlies mate and their offspring can also mate. They're fertile. It's not like a donkey, which donkeys are infertile. But I think more important for what we're talking about today is the fact that they are developing synthetic biology tools and they release those tools for free for people who are in the conservation movement, which I think synthetic biology is still very new to the people in the conservation movement. Mm-hmm. Ben of Revive and Restore talked about that. So they're doing a lot of interesting things. And we've talked about their crazy valuation and how they must have a lot behind their paywall that they haven't shown us yet.
Yeah, no, it was great. I started realizing why the amount of money they raised and everything was so high. I mean, the way that Ben Lamb talked about how they take care of all the animals, they really make sure that they're not in little cages. They're on reserves. At least the direwolves are on a reserve, but there's those little woolly mice and they have their own little home. But I loved that part of it. I started seeing how this money was going to be used and how valuable it would be just because of the amount of partners they also have. They had so many partnerships. He was saying there's 94 different organizations they're working with. And it was great to hear how their approach is very thoughtful. They're not just 5 people that are doing something in a lab. They're very collaborative across different stakeholders. So from the nonprofits, like you're saying, the conservationists, different scientists. Ben Lamb did a great job of really talking about synthetic biology, but then Joe Rogan did a really good job of pushing back and bringing up the societal questions, the questions that people always ask. It's like, well, what happens if this gets in the hands of nefarious people, this technology to create life or edit life?
Joe brings it up a couple of times where he's like, what if some ultra-rich oligarch decides that they want to have their own direwolf? Will you guys do that for them? And as you said, they have all these advisors and these top-notch scientists behind them. So it seems like they're really setting up a very thoughtful organization. And no, sadly, they are not selling those woolly mice. And it's unlikely that any of us is going to get a direwolf anytime soon.
Yeah. They have top-notch scientists, but also investors. Did he say Chris Hemsworth was an investor? I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I think he also said that Peter, who's the director of Game of Thrones, and George R.R. Martin are also investors. So it's this crazy set of investors that are behind this company. I'm really looking forward to seeing what else comes out of their company and hopefully eventually getting Ben or someone from the team here on the Grow Everything podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'll just really quick say too, like the big thing with Colossal is that ex vivo wombs was very exciting to hear more about. I mean, I knew that that was something that they had to build. We talked about on the podcast before, but the fact that he talked about it and all the use cases that it could help people that want to have children and they can't, but you're able to have it through a technology like ex vivo womb. And that comes with controversy if that's in the wrong hands too. And they went into that. But anyway, highly recommend everyone listen to the Joe Rogan episode with Ben Lamb. We'll have that in the show notes for you guys to check out.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm going to bring it even closer to home.
Yes.
It is Biotech Beauty Week here on the Grow Everything podcast. We are going to be attending Suppliers Day, which is the New York Society of Chemists event. It's a 2-day event at the Javits Center. And we've talked a fair amount about biotech beauty on this podcast. We've had people like Rocky from the Estee Lauder companies, Robert Weinstein, who is at Robert Tay. We've had Savine Sahib of K18, Jasmina of Arkea, Alex Loristani. The list goes on and on. Biotech beauty is a thing that we're really interested in. Why, Erum? Why are you excited about biotech beauty? We talk about it all the time.
Yeah, because beauty is skin deep and not skin deep. Okay. Literally and figuratively, they're different things, but literally, it's skin, it's epithelial cells. We're talking about how to create products to make our epithelial cells, our skin cells, the proteins that make up our fingernails and our hair. How do we work with biology and create unique expressions of beauty? I think a lot of times when people think of beauty, they automatically think of makeup. But again, beauty is just a state of mind. It's a feeling of confidence. It's health. I'd like to think of beauty as being healthy as well. There's a lot of opportunity to create unique products. And from a commercial standpoint, it's not a very high volume of product game, but it has a high velocity of sales if done right. And we've seen this with some of our clients and other people that we've worked with. I mean, of course, K18, we always like to bring them up, but that's why I'm excited about it. What about you?
It's like you said, it's a high velocity game. There's new discoveries that, in terms of formulations or ingredients, that, like you said, are not just about makeup and colors, but also about keeping you looking younger, keeping your skin protected from the sun. As you said, it moves really quickly, and we see it firsthand. We see new products, we see new ingredients, we see formulators. We were just on the phone last week talking to someone who potentially is going to be on the podcast, and they pointed out a product that has a fermented lactobacillus, but there's only 4 ingredients in it. And we were asking, what is this crazy product? How can it work? How can it be preserved? It has no preservatives. It doesn't have to be refrigerated. And I think that that was a good example of the evolution of beauty and biotech and minimalism in beauty products. But then on the other side of it, biotech beauty is very complicated. The labels get longer. People are looking for clinical proof that these things work. And the competition is mano a mano. It's like fighting in the streets.
Yeah.
You just go to a Sephora or an Ulta Beauty and the shelves are just constantly being turned over. There's so much out there.
Yes, there is so much out there. And we're going to get a chance to look at some of the interesting innovation, exciting innovation that's happening in the market at a conference called Suppliers Day that's happening here in New York City at the Javits Center, which is New York's finest conference institution. And it's going to be great. We're going to see a lot of our friends that, again, have either been on the podcast or that we know very well and that are on this episode today. But I'm excited to go. It's my first time going and I'll be reporting back. But what about you, Karl? What are your thoughts on Suppliers Day?
I think it's going to be overwhelming in a way that is different from SymBioBeta. I would probably say the exhibit floor is probably about the double the size of the exhibit floor, maybe triple the size of the exhibit floor at SymBioBeta. So people who we know like Shara Tiku and C16 should be there. And our guest today, Erika Milczek of Curie Co, her company will also be there. So I'm looking forward to seeing them and actually doing this interview with Erika.
Yeah, I'm excited to meet her in person, hopefully when she's here at Suppliers Day. And we had a great conversation with her in this episode. How did you meet Erika?
So I first met Erika through GenSpace, where you and I met, and we talk a lot about GenSpace on the podcast. But Erika had set up her company using the GenSpace lab as her testing ground. So that feels like it was many, many years ago. It was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And then she subsequently relocated down to North Carolina. And I've run into Erika a few times, either at SymBioBeta or at Biofabricate. So I'm excited to have this conversation with Erika. And I think with that, we should just get it started. All right, Erika Milczek, Curie Co. We are so glad to have you on the Grow Everything podcast.
Wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, Karl.
So we've known each other for probably 10 years, if you can believe it. I mean, it's hard to believe you had started the company out of GenSpace.
Right.
Now I've been a GenSpace board member for 3 years, I think. But let's get some background on you, what your career trajectory has looked like, and what motivated you to start Curie Co.
Oh, so I'm a chemist. My PhD is in chemistry. My undergrad was chemistry. I started my first career as a process chemist at Merck. But the irony is, as much as my foundation was in chemistry, I've spent most of my career replacing chemical processes or chemical ingredients with biotech or biotech-derived ingredients. And that's really what led me to starting CurieCo, actually. There was an opportunity. Really, there was a ton of regulation that was coming out. Just had started in the US. Europe was a little bit more advanced. A lot of legacy chemicals that have been in consumer products for years. Regulators said, we're done. We're going to clean up this space and we're going to start to ban these chemicals. And that created an opportunity for new molecules to come to market and new technologies. And that's really how CurieCo was born. It was off of this regulatory opportunity. And so left Merck, started the company in GenSpace. In fact, one of our first hires and oldest colleague is Will Schindel, who used to be the lab manager at GenSpace. And he's been with the company through GenSpace, J Labs, and now Raleigh, North Carolina. So we're now located in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. We were one of the pandemic casualties of New York, left the city. Love the city, by the way. Love and miss my hometown, New York. But it was a great move for us, moving to RTP.
Amazing.
I think that's our origin story and gives you the to now.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I love that story. There's so much parallels between our own story. Karl and I met at GenSpace. So GenSpace needs to highlight these stories because there's been a lot of great things that came from having this community biotech, biolab space. And wow, look how far a lot of us have come.
Oh, I so agree. That was such a special space. I don't think that there are enough shout outs to GenSpace and how so many companies, their origin story,
Yeah,
is space.
for sure.
Yeah, Karl, to bring that up in the board meeting next time.
I'm making a note of that right now because it's absolutely true. They don't do enough of those kinds of case studies.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've heard about Curie Co over the years. You guys have been going strong for quite some time. I looked at the website recently and there's this concept of elegant evolution at Curie Co. How does this approach fundamentally change what's possible in consumer products compared to traditional chemistry? We'd love to hear a bit more about what's going on at Curie Co.
Okay. So for us, we use a lot of directed evolution. But directed evolution is just a very fancy way of saying we are speeding up what naturally happens in the environment. So nature evolves, survival of the fittest. The only thing that we're doing is in a lab, we're accelerating that. So what we've done is we took a look at regulation and we said, are there large enough markets for us to go after? I mean, large chemical markets that make sense to drive a completely new technology in. And we found that for us, we thought that cross-linking chemicals were a really great starting point. Okay, so this is going to sound really esoteric, cross-linking chemicals.
Yeah, what is that?
Let me drive this home for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So if you have a wrinkle-free cotton shirt, that's probably made with formaldehyde. If you have anything that's made with leather, like the leather in your car is probably made with chromium tanned leather. These are cross-linking chemicals. So these are small chemicals that can come in to natural materials, bind and cross-link to give you additional strength and integrity in that material. So it makes a natural material have longevity and function more like a synthetic material. So it gives you longevity and function. great chemicals. They have been used across multi-verticals for years. We even use these chemicals, or at least used to use them, as preservatives. So formaldehyde and formaldehyde releasers, really up until about maybe 5 years ago, we were using them to preserve our shampoo.
Mm.
You can find a few of these on the market today.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Pervasively used in construction materials.
Mhm.
Yeah.
In those cases, it's used for microbial control. People probably know formaldehyde best for embalming fluid,
Oh, yeah.
preserving human bodies. Very versatile classes of chemistry, multi-vertical. We need these forms of chemistry. Now, the problem is a lot of these chemicals that I've just named off to you have either detrimental impact on the environment or human health problems where you have carcinogens and off-gassing that's leading to health issues, things like that. So regulators are doing their jobs and they're saying, okay, we've been using these for years, but it's time to clean up industries. That doesn't happen all at the same time. So what hits the shampoo market in Europe maybe doesn't hit the US market until years later. What's hit the US market for construction still hasn't hit markets in Asia like Singapore, China, etc. We at CurieCo have taken a lot of time to think about where do we start? So where's a good starting point? We know that these technologies are needed. We know that these chemicals are needed. Where do we launch first? Do we focus on construction? Do we focus on textiles? Do we focus on shampoo and consumer products? And then we take a big step back and we say, what's the most appropriate biology to replace that chemistry? Go into lab and we set up a directed evolution campaign so that we can develop good molecules for those markets. That's the background and the market answer to what we're doing.
Mhm.
Right.
But maybe to tell you a little bit more tangibly how we stand up against these chemicals. If you take 1 metric ton of our bioactive, we can displace over 40 metric tons of formaldehyde. So biology, because biology is reacting with biology, it's a much more tuned solution to what you're needing. So for us, when we look at this, we say, okay, if we're going to go after, let's say leather and use that leather example. Well, leather is biology. There's a biological solution for making skin or leather more durable and stronger. Those are the kinds of solutions that we focus on. We then do a directed evolution campaign, which means for us, we know that we're bringing biological solutions into a largely chemical world. And so a lot of our evolution campaigns aren't necessarily about fixing the biology. It's instead about teaching biology to operate in a largely chemical environment. So we introduce selection pressures that have, say, chemical. So a selection pressure could be as simple as saying, well, if we want to replace formaldehyde in shampoo, let's just squirt shampoo in the presence of our biomolecule and see which ones survive and behave better. Those are mutations we want to take forward. Anything that was worse, we want to move out of the population. And we just keep going through iterative cycles of this using automation and a lot of, quite frankly, computational work to handle these very large data sets.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm starting to think the gears are turning. I mean, we talk a lot about this world of consumer biotech, which is a world that you're supporting, creating this infrastructure disability, these directed evolution campaigns. First time I heard that phrase, over 130 episodes. Very interesting. But I'm curious, how do you see biology-based ingredients really transforming the supply chain aspect of business and not just making it incrementally better too, so the functionality of it as well?
Oh, gosh. So there are so many ways to tackle that question.
Yes.
It's a great question. I think first, some of it is our existing supply chain really isn't set up for biological solutions, but in some ways, biological solutions could be much better. So let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean. Biological solutions oftentimes are going to be, quite frankly, just environmentally friendly. And that means they can be food for microorganisms,
Yeah.
which means spoilage can be a problem. Think about food. We try to ship food around, spoilage is a problem. So oftentimes you get some of these biosolutions and they have to be refrigerated or cold stored, cold chains. And you can think about that. Vaccines are a great example, some of these biologic drugs. So in some ways, that infrastructure slightly exists, but it's not as robust in consumer products as it is in food and pharma. So there's one. So it's kind of a negative. I think there are also ways of looking at it as a positive to supply chain. So like I told you, if 1 ton of our material can displace 40 tons of the chemical, well, imagine just getting 40 tanker trucks off the road.
Yeah.
Just what that does for traffic, imagine what that does for emissions, and then imagine real estate footprint of our customers having to store that inventory. There are ways that we can simplify supply chain, but I would say in the short term, there are ways that maybe supply chain isn't quite ready for these new technologies, and we're having to roll with the punches and get creative and figure out, okay, how do we get these things to market? Or how do we make them room temperature stable, which we've done both. We've said, okay, well, we can make it room temperature stable with a little bit more engineering, or we can find cold chain storage so we can get a product to market faster and be creative about leveraging different types of supply chains.
Erika, can you give us a specific example of how this works in practice? I mean, you mentioned leather, you mentioned shampoo and these kinds of things, but I think an example would be really useful for our listeners.
Fantastic. Happy to do that. So one of the products that we launched in April of last year is Curamina. This is a bioactive that's used in hair care. And so what we use this bioactive for is bond building. So making hair stronger, more durable. But we also found that it pairs beautifully with proteins that are found in hair care products. So about 40% of all new hair care launches are formulated with a protein. So if you look on your shampoo, you're probably going to see wheat protein or soy or keratin. These are proteins that are formulated in shampoos so that you have very natural film formers on hair and conditioning agents on hair. We created Curamina to make new bonds with hair, to strengthen hair, to add more resilience, and to take proteins and be able to seal them onto the surface of hair. So now, if you have a product that already uses protein in it, you throw in Curamina, we can make that product anywhere from 30 to 60% more effective because that protein seals on the surface of hair rather than washing down the drain.
Yeah, that's amazing.
We also have to turn around and then make demos of everything. So Curamina has a raw material that's on the market, so B2B raw material. But we do these leave-in conditioners and masks and all sorts of different things that we put together for customers so that they can understand how to formulate and how to use this new ingredient. So that's one example. And then with that specific product, we've actually found that it's been really fun to partner with other companies on new launches. A really great example is there's a microfluidic company called Capsum. So they're a contract manufacturer. They use microfluidics to make all sorts of really cool cosmetic products. They've been a major player in skincare. And we are bringing this new hair care product to market where we have microfluidic beads that are made with our active and then protein on the other side, which is more of a conditioner. And so a customer can pump at their home and activate the product at time of use and seal that protein onto their hair. And actually, P2, their conditioning agent, is in here. So it's this fully green concept of being able to kind of do dual chamber activation at the home. So that's one example. So again, took inspiration from chemicals that were on the market, but then said, okay, well, let's take this a step further. What are other trends that we can follow to give some pretty unique claims and bring a new bioactive to market? So that's what we're doing in personal care. And then we had a food launch about 3 months ago in March. That one we're really excited about. In fact, I would say the whole company is really passionate about the food product that just came to market. So about 1/6 of all dairy that's on the market is never consumed. It's actually thrown away by either the retailer or the consumer. So about 1/6 of all of
That's
your
crazy.
that comes out of a cow is just thrown away. And this is globally. It's a global problem. It's a problem with spoilage and stability and just really being able to get these dairy products from the manufacturer to the grocer to the consumer. And we developed a really fun ingredient that stabilizes milk and can improve the stability of milk 300%. So
Wow.
taking us from 3 days to 9 days that can improve the yield of cheese over double. So cheese curd. And that also has an impact on waste streams because that waste stream, you're now getting more of the protein out. So it's easier to process your waste streams. So we're really excited about that product and stabilizing dairy so it can get to consumers and quite frankly, last in your fridge longer.
Yeah.
Amazing.
This is really interesting because as Karl and I have been speaking to our guests and our clients and really, again, looking in this world of consumer biotech, there are what we call the value chain ecosystem. So people on the early stages that are first, of course, you're making feedstocks, but then you're making the different ingredients and how the ingredients play together. And you guys are creating ingredients. And then you have the formulators and then you have the brands. And you talked about creating demo products for customers. And you mean the businesses, not direct to consumer. You're not making products.
We're not going to consumers. No. This is really because anytime you bring a new technology to market, it's hard for adoption.
Yeah.
And that's hard for any company. It's not just startups. You bring a new technology to market, you now have to teach the market how to use that ingredient. And I would say the easiest way to teach someone how to use someone is to show them, right?
Totally.
Here's a product, play with it.
Right. Okay. That's really interesting. I love that. I mean, you have to make it in order to demonstrate. So totally get it. And then with this food ingredient, are all these made through biomanufacturing is it cellular? Is it cell-free? Just curious. And you said directed evolution. Is that a fermentation process?
Yeah, okay. So I can kind of run through that. So we divide things in the R&D. Let's say we divide R&D by new molecule discovery. Okay. So this is new lead ID where we would bring a lead molecule through. That's what we do on the directed evolution side. And a lot of the tools that we leverage there are actually cell-free protein expression because we can go through directed evolution campaigns incredibly fast, very, very rapidly. And we can really interrogate what is it that we're trying to look for? Is it speed? So that's rate. We want something to happen faster, improve rate. Stability. We can do temperature stability, chemical stability, all these different types of things. And so we can tease out what are the phenotypes that we want, and we can make that ideal candidate. So then directed evolution, we do those campaigns, and we'll say take maybe 3 to 5 lead molecules through that we then plug into expression strains. Now we're moving out of cell-free, we're moving into fermenters. So at this point, we want to make buckets of something. When we're doing cell-free, we're making micrograms. Tiny little droplets. And that's good enough for us because all we need to do is tie genotype to phenotype and keep on running through. But then when we really need to say, is this going to do the trick? Is this going to work to replace a chemical in a large process? We'll take 3 to 5 candidates through, plug them into expression organisms. And we have a lot of expression organisms within the company. We've looked at both bacterial and fungal expression strains. So we have a lot of, I would say, knowledge and expression strains in that category. Then we do fermentation. Once we've selected the right expression organism for that enzyme, it's as simple as doing a little more optimization, a little bit more on the process development. What do you feed the bug to make it make what you want the most? Scale up. I'm making all of this sound easy. It's not.
I was like, oh, really?
We know. Yeah.
So, right? I mean, all of the years and years and years of work.
Right.
So that's how we bring things through. And then at the very end, I would say the most important thing is recognizing when we didn't quite get it right. Sometimes that lead that we thought was a lead really isn't a lead, and we have to fall back on one of these backups that we selected. Sometimes we actually find that several things could work, and we're like, but this is better for this industry, and this is better for this industry. And so we can segregate that way. But that's how we get the 80% of the way. So now at that point, we're about 80% of the way to solving a chemical problem. But we have that last 20%. That last 20% we oftentimes fix with formulation. I say, okay, now let's figure out how to make this to where when we add our ingredient into this anionic surfactant, it doesn't precipitate. Well, can we do that with formulation effects by adding different types of excipients to just bridge that last 20%?
Hi, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Messaging Lab, the force multiplier for biotech. Your biotech company is making the world a better place. You know that, we know that. But does the world? There's a big reason why some biotech companies attract investors, sign up customers, and get attention. That reason is strategic communications. At Messaging Lab, we translate complex science and economics into compelling narratives. And we have done that for the most successful biotech companies across healthcare, agriculture, personal care and beauty, materials, and the list goes on. We're here to make sure your ideas not only get heard, but resonate with your audience. So if it's time to amplify your company's voice, visit messaginglab.com to explore how we can elevate your story and grow your business.
I'm super interested in this, Erika, because on the one hand, you talked about having to create these products so that people get to know what you're doing. On the other hand, you've described what the discovery process looks like. What we see is that there's a challenge when it comes to commercialization of products. How do you guys address that a little bit differently? Like, we've got plenty of people who are discovering great stuff. We've got a few people who are smart enough to do what you guys are doing, where you create products to make it easier for a potential client to see how it works. But making that bigger leap to commercialization is still very much a challenge. What are you guys doing to address that?
Yeah, we're doing every mistake that you can possibly do. Now that's a mistake. Don't do that again.
It's the only way to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way to be an expert is to literally make every mistake you can possibly make. Then voila, you're an expert. I mean, humility, I would say, is the key in this. We've tried a lot of different things. I honestly cannot say this emphatically enough. Partnership is key to success. There are so many companies out there that already know how to bring new ingredients to market. The trick is to show them that we can bring them value and expand their market share if they partner with us to bring new things to market. And I think this collaboration with Capsum and P2, great example. Capsum, they're already a contract manufacturer. They already are a major player in like color cosmetics and skincare. We can bring them into the hair care market. So it's a new angle for them to be able to pick up. P2 is already selling and having a lot of success in the conditioning hair care market. So for us to join up with these two really stellar companies, we were able to learn a lot from them and frankly, just broaden our reach. So that's a really good example. We have some other really exciting partnerships that haven't been announced yet. They're coming out. I think one we're actually launching in late July. So it's been fantastic working with these other companies and leveraging their know-how. But from our side, it's trial and error. We learned that it was so important to put these demos together. We have a lot of humility when it comes to our technical docs and working with customers and just asking them, okay, what did we do wrong? This is how did you do it? And just learning from that, learning from the mistakes and iterating, just consistently iterating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Failure is a measure of success, I would say, for sure. There's been a lot of talk of like, is there a way to share failure data? Because that's so important because they know what not to do, save some time.
Yeah.
But you're looking at it as an opportunity. And I love that type of thinking. True entrepreneur, true scientist. And then one of the things I wanted to touch on too is the strategy of looking at what's being regulated out. And so in today's world, that's more topical than ever. We have RFK Jr. talking about removing all toxic food additives, specifically food dyes.
Mm-hmm.
But the two products you mentioned, was there a regulation play or is this something that you're going to still continue going after? And then finally, we might have an opportunity for you.
Yeah, so I would say for us, when we do our early development, because development timelines in biology are so long, so long. When we do anything that's going to enter early stage development, it has to be inspired by a regulatory trend that we know will sustain. So when I was saying the cross-linking chemicals, we knew chromium-6 has largely been banned in most countries at this point. Chromium-3 can still be used, but now you have an end-of-life issue because chromium-3 will readily go to chromium-6. So we know that that's regulation that's coming. We can say that. So right now, we may not launch a product for tanning, but we can develop for it because having something that can do that, if you can modify the skin of a cowhide, well, you can also affect the skin of a human and sheep and alligator and all of these other things. If we can do really fun things with hair on a human, guess what? We can also affect sheep and goat hair and et cetera, et cetera. That wool and cashmere and all of these other really fun natural fibers that we love these natural fibers, but they just don't have the performance of synthetic fibers. So our goal is not to say, hey, guess what? We're replacing PFAS, or hey, guess what? We're replacing polyurethane. That doesn't make sense. Instead, we say, hey, look, we know that you have to transition off of some of these synthetics to meet your corporate goals or regulatory requirements. We can allow you to go into a natural fiber and give you those performance claims that you are now losing because you lost this other material. So we're not trying to replace. We cannot give them the same thing. Chemicals and biology are just different. But the chemical going out created an opportunity for new technology. So that's how we view it. How can we tell the customer what we are giving you is the next generation? Let us give you performance. And so everything that we think about from a marketing standpoint, what product are we bringing to market? We say we want to strengthen, preserve, or improve the performance of whatever that customer currently has. We don't want to convince them that they don't want to use what they have. We want to say, yeah, keep using what you're using, but we're going to either strengthen it or give you more longevity, durability, or improve some performance claims. And that's how we're coming out and trying to dovetail and slip in with these regulations.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I especially love the improving the performance, because what we hear a lot is that's what people are looking for. They want that absolute superior performance that they can't get if they're going to have to replace these chemicals.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Karl, I'll give you another example of how doing the replacement strategy doesn't always pan out. I love a veggie burger. And in fact, I will go for a black bean burger over a real burger any day of the week. And I'm not going to lie, I slip bacon on my black bean burger. Does that make sense? No. Vegans, please don't throw stones at me. But I love a black bean burger. I think that they're fantastic, but I don't order a black bean burger because I think it's going to taste like a cheeseburger. I want something different. I want a black bean burger. And I think that if you speak to the consumer in that way, and speak to the customer in that way. So for us, the customer is the formulator, and they have to really respond to what a consumer wants. Don't tell them we're giving you the same thing. That was bad, but here's the new thing that's going to give you the same. No, hey, here's something new. Are you interested in this? This is unique. This is new. You haven't tried it before. Unfortunately, taking that route, it's a longer timeline. You have to teach everybody why you're special and why you're new and why you work, and then how to use you. So TBD on whether or not we have the right approach here, guys. But that's kind of been our approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think the approach works, and it reinforces what we're hearing in the marketplace in terms of people just want that performance. It's not, the replacing doesn't work, and it's a harder sell, much harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you were victims of COVID. You guys ended up relocating to Research Triangle Park, a very dynamic biotech community in North Carolina. What does that look like for you? What does your facility look like? What does biomanufacturing look like in RTP?
So our lab is literally right there. Beautiful. Yeah, I absolutely love the space that we're in, and top-notch colleagues. So really, really great team to work with. We moved here because we knew that there was a lot of industry and talent in our space in RTP. I'll give a shout out to what was Novozymes is now Novonesis, which is really the largest biotech company in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are the leaders for anything industrial biotech, and being so close to their North American headquarters for us was critical because great talent. They've been very collaborative with us. They're just wonderful to have as neighbors. Literally across the street is Syngenta.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
A mile down this way is BASF. So you have all of this know-how and commercial talent in the area that you can learn from. And I say commercial talent because there's a lot of commercial talent here. There's also R&D here, but there's much more focus on commercialization, manufacturing, getting to market. marketing, sales, these sorts of things. So we thought that this was a really great place to move for that next stage of the company, the commercialization stage. I will stand firm that New York, there's no greater place in the world to do early stage R&D. The talent is unbelievable. My colleagues in New York, I'm still in awe of. They're great to work with. Everyone at Gen Space, just the grit and the scrappiness and the cleverness, and it's a great place to do early stage R&D. I can't imagine a better place for it. But for us, I think we needed to hit that commercial focus. We needed to have a place that we can build, scale, and grow. So RTP, it was a good decision.
Awesome.
Yeah, we say, like, first of all, second, third, the fact that New York is a great ecosystem for early stage R&D and just finding the people, finding the talent in New York. We say that you hustle in New York, you grind in Boston or RTP or SF. You're just doing and building, and you already figured out everything for at least getting the first phase ready. So totally agree with that. We also mentioned partnerships and the importance of partnerships when it comes to commercializing. We 100% agree with that. It takes a village. There's just so many partners that develop an ecosystem. So can you give us a little bit more insight on your strategy for building commercial ecosystems? So not just talent, but those partners. And how do you build it around these biological technologies to get it into the hands of consumers? What's that look like for you in your mind?
Yeah. So it takes a lot of different forms, and I think each vertical is different. So the three spaces that we're by far the most active in: personal care, food, and then actually leather and textiles, which we're not very public about. And working in these three different spaces, partnership looks very different. And actually, how about I start on the leather and textile side? Because we haven't really talked a lot about that.
Yeah, let's
sounds
do it.
good.
It's such a fun space to be in that we know nothing about at Curie Co. And we always approach partnerships in that way. We tell them what we know is if you tell us what's wrong with this, we know how to fix it. We can commit to that. But what we don't know is we don't know cotton, and we don't know other cellulosics. We don't know vegan leather. We don't know real leather. You know,
Right.
what we can share with you is anything that we learned from ChatGPT. Right?
Right.
Not bad, but that doesn't make us an expert in leather. The way that we play in that space is we will deploy a team to work on site, side by side with a partner, but it's them doing the heavy lifting. It's our partners who are saying, okay, this is how manufacturing works for blue jeans, for instance, and walking us through what that looks like. Or this is how it looks going from cotton to the yarn, to the textile, to the et cetera, et cetera. And us doing a lot of listening and then saying, okay, well, where we think, based on your process, where we think that we're going to fit in the best is this part of supply chain right here. And that's not always with the first company that we start out. Sometimes they have to then connect us with either someone downstream or upstream of where they are. We found that in the textile space, it's been such a beautiful space where people are very open about, that's not us, but you want to go to this guy over here.
Nice.
They're also pretty good about knowing who's looking for new technology. So we found that textile and leather space, very open for telling us who you want to go to is this over here. The leather side, one of our favorite partnerships is a vertically integrated tannery fashion house. So completely vertically integrated. That, I can't tell you how powerful that is because they both know the market and they know the R&D side, and they have their OEMs that they work with. So they know how to liaise with them. That partnership started less than a year ago, and we're already moving to a pilot scale now. Less than a year. And this is for us not knowing anything about leather. So I would just want to acknowledge that's the partner just being so great. And we had these regular calls anytime they had a problem. They said, okay, this is the problem. They were candid about it. That allowed us to go in and iterate or help them to find a solution to get past that problem.
Amazing.
Yeah. So leather and textiles that we've really enjoyed actually working with the customer itself, the user of our material. Food, similarly, we work a lot with the customer itself. On the personal care side, we've actually found that it's been much more productive to work with B2B chemical companies who are experts in this space and to partner with other ingredient providers or chemical companies that know how to talk to the customer, that know how to formulate, that know what's going to resonate. So for each field, we change a little bit. What's our strategy? And we're responsive to who's looking for new technology and who is willing to follow with us on this journey of learning.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we know how important partnership is, and we know how important it is to build out an ecosystem, especially with innovators. But it sounds like you guys have that wired in a very interesting way that other people could learn from.
Well, I definitely appreciate the accolades there, Carl. Take it. I'll totally take it. I would say we learn from each industry, and it takes a little while to learn. And we're not so stubborn that we can't acknowledge that we did something wrong. And we say, okay,
Right.
let's redirect. Yeah.
Yeah. And then over the years, you've done some fundraising. It's been a pretty challenging fundraising environment, but you guys were somehow successful. What was the secret? What did you tell investors that convinced them to bring on biology-based ingredients in this process that you're talking about instead of investing in the latest SaaS product?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. That's a great question. That's tough because honestly, Carl, I'm going to give you the same response I think any entrepreneur is going to give you. Fundraising is one of the hardest things that you do as an entrepreneur. You hear a whole lot of no's to get a yes, and you have to keep on powering through that. So I would say that we disproportionately hear no or disproportionately hear yes related to any other company. But I do think that what we were able to find early on is fantastic investors. So our first investors helped us network to our next round of investors, which helped us to network to the next round of investors. So I cannot say emphatically enough how important it is to get the right foundation of investors early on. And we were very fortunate, very, very lucky to have just really top-notch investors. The earliest were just angel investors, actually, not really institutional money. It was angel investors. And then I think for us, a big game changer was when Horizons Ventures came on board and led our Series A. And being a part of that whole portfolio and the network of companies, because again, top-notch companies, with going with these different groups, Breakout Ventures, so Breakout Labs, another great one. They so focus on bringing the companies and their portfolios together so that you can learn from each other.
That's so smart.
Those founders became my best friends, my advisors, my therapists, my whatever you need at the time. When you have a group like that, where it's a venture organization that brings everybody together rather than allowing competition to happen, instead, we're going to bring this community and we're going to support each other. I think Horizons has done that very well. Breakout Labs and Breakout Ventures has done that beautifully. There are a handful of investors, at least, that I would just shout out to, even some that didn't fund Curie Co, but are also really good at creating that community. Because how you meet the next investors in the company is frankly either through your founder network or your investor network.
Totally.
That's the best way to do it. Doesn't matter how many times I get on stage, there is nothing more powerful than a warm intro from another founder or from another investor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well
incredible.
said.
Yeah, we see that in terms of we mentor different organizations. So IndieBio, I mentioned to you earlier before the recording, Merck. They're like, oh yeah, you should do a session here. I'm like, okay, we can, but it's also create space for the founders to talk to each other because they're all in it. They all have similar problems in different industries. A lot of playbooks can be exchanged, and it sounds like you're able to leverage that too. It's very smart.
Yeah. I think that there are some organizations that are also just really good at making that network and telling, because it really starts with the investor saying, we prioritize you guys making these relationships. And once they set the example, people follow the example and say, okay, we're not competitive. We're going to share. We're going to resource to each other and that sort of thing, even if you're in the same field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for investors, I'm sure you also painted a 5 to 10 year picture of what Curie Co is going to look like. Can you share that with us? What do you imagine for the future? We want a visioneer. That's something we do here in the podcast.
Yeah. So when I started Curie Co, really the vision, and that maintains, is to create the next big industry that's moving forward, that's dominating. So for the last 120 years, our world has been dominated by chemical manufacture, but now that's changing. And we're moving into this world of biomanufacture. So these amazing companies like Dow, DuPont, BASF, and then so many others that you maybe have not heard of,
Yeah.
but big chemical players that have become the name of manufacturing, what we think of when we think of manufacturing. My hope is that Curie Co is that name for the next 100 to 120 years. That's the dream, that we're at the forefront of this wave of bringing in a new form of manufacturing. We're in that transition now. And I don't think that Curie Co is the only one. There are so many others that are also at the forefront of this wave. There's some that may have come out a step or two too soon, and it's heartbreaking because we've learned so much from them. Amyris, I cannot say enough what Amyris did for this entire field. And
Yeah.
I don't think that they get enough credit for being the first, right?
Right.
And you have to make every mistake that you can make before you succeed. You don't know what success looks like until you try. And I think Amyris did a great job of that. And Amyris has had highs and lows. And what I'm reading for Amyris to still be a name 50, 100 years from now, too, along with Curie Co and companies like Geltor and Modern Meadow and Impossible Foods and Bolt and all of these companies that Keel Labs, right? That I hope can help us transition from this world of synthetic and petro now into sustainable and bio.
Yeah, a lot of those companies, a lot of those founders are from New York City. So, or founded these companies in New York City. So, hello.
Yeah, let's not cast any shade on our California friends.
I know. That's not. There's a bunch of New Yorkers talking.
Yeah, please. I mean,
clearly.
Yes.
Clearly. So one last question as we wrap this up, Erika, unless there's anything else that you want to talk about. But as we think about consumer biotech, consumer products, what do you think is most overdue for biological disruption? Maybe some category that no one's talking about that should have been disrupted by now.
Oh, gosh. So I will tell you where I think the number one problem that we face in the future is going to be around packaging.
Yeah.
Either we need a completely new solution to move us away from packaging. So we need just a complete paradigm shift. How do we just eliminate packaging from the equation? Or we need a game changer in the world of packaging. And we are not going to get that without incredibly strong regulation. Because right now, it is so cheap to have a water bottle. Do you know, this weighs nothing. That bottle weighs absolutely nothing. And glass weighs a lot, right? And there isn't enough investment in those biomaterials and the infrastructure of these biomaterials are more biodegradable. To really be able to bring something like this forward, I want to salute the work that Cargill did, the early work of Cargill and NatureWorks and the PLA story. But understand that story started in 1989.
Yeah.
First product, I don't even think hit the market until 2001.
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I'll tell you what, Carl, I think it's worthwhile. You need to bring Jill Zullo on this to talk about the story of NatureWorks and how Cargill invested and really saw this future. But now here we are, 2025. They started this work in 1989. We're in 2025. PLA is only 1% of the plastic market. It is compostable. It is made from sustainable resources. It can really tackle a lot of our plastic problem. It is less than 1% of that plastic market. We need regulation. And I think that that's anytime you look at the ocean plastic problem, anytime you look at the recycling problems and supply chain problems, a lot of this is coming back to packaging. We've got to fix packaging now. And we can't just rely on, well, let's cut down trees and use more cardboard.
Yeah.
And then let's recycle that cardboard. We need something disruptive. We need some game-changing technologies here. We need some real brain power behind it. So I think that that's it. That's where I would say if you are coming out of school and you are wanting to change the world and really disrupt, I would really urge our young population to take on packaging. And I would encourage investors to fund it.
Yeah.
Good. To start regulating in this space.
It's super interesting that you mentioned that because I have seen commercials more than once where all these big, I'd say, beverage companies are touting the fact that they're using more recyclable materials for their packaging, but clearly it's not enough. So I agree with you. I think there's a huge opportunity there.
I really do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this has been incredible. That was a great call to action. And I love that you're thinking of a bigger problem. You're not just like, oh, yeah, we need new, better ingredients. It wasn't just for Curie Co. By the way, Curie Co. after Mary Curie?
Yes. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I'm sorry, from a scientist perspective, first of all, chemist.
Yes.
Shout out to a really phenomenal chemist, but the first scientist to win 2 Nobel Prizes. And I think that you can talk about gender, you can talk about whatever you want, but just the first scientist to win 2 Nobel Prizes, I thought that struck the right chord.
Yeah, that's amazing.
For most people.
I love it. I love it. Now, this has been incredible. Thank you so much, Erika, for coming on the podcast. We want to talk to you again because I know you have some new announcements coming out later this year as we dig more into consumer biotech and working on creating more ecosystems and strengthening, improving, and enhancing, not replacing. We've learned that.
High performance.
Yes. You've shown your leadership. You definitely give off leadership vibes. I love it. So we'll have to bring you back on, but thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Erum. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Erika. Look forward to talking to you soon. Hopefully seeing you in a couple of weeks, and keep at it.
Will do. Thanks so much. Thanks, guys. Good to talk to you.
Great talking to you.
Bye.
So, Karl, what'd you think about that episode?
I mean, Erika is so smart. I really appreciated the interview because she talked about something that is near and dear to our hearts, which is this idea that partnerships are the key to success in biotech. And we talk about orchestration being the key, standalone companies that are trying to conquer a market. Yet there is a lot of room for that. But you can be much more successful if you focus on creating partnerships with the right people, and you can probably move faster if you do that. So I loved that and really liked the conversation. What did you think, Erum?
Yeah, the partnerships are key. She's at RTP, or Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, that has a lot of biotech companies and other types of companies that leverage biotech. And it's great. I'd love to go down there and just see how people hang out. I mean, I bet there's lots of events to bring the community together, and then they can make deals or partnerships. And I like the fact that they're localized. Silicon Valley was localized. RTP is localized. We have our Brooklyn biotech community here that's all local with GenSpace and all these other biotech communities. So I love proximity. Clearly, Erika does too. It sounds like it's very successful for her. But another thing that I really liked, Erika is such a great communicator. I loved when she was talking about creating products and that they have this cell-free evolution campaign. And I'm like, oh, I like the fact that it's a campaign, because in the world of communications, we have campaigns, but giving us some insight on how Curie Co works is always helpful, and where they play. So they play in beauty. They talked about hair care, some of the products that came out. What did you think about the products and approach?
I remember when Erika first introduced the Curamina, which is a bioactive for bond building. And I thought that was an exciting product. I don't know if it's on the market yet, but I'm excited to see it when it comes out. Apparently, it pairs really nicely with other hair care products. And there's still a lot of not great ingredients that are found across the cosmetic space. And hair relaxers contain formaldehyde, which is really not a good product for any of us. It's what's used in embalming fluid when people die. You will often smell it when you get a product that's been packaged and stuck in a package for a really long time. I don't know if they coat clothes with it. I think they used to. But just getting away from those kinds of damaging chemicals with something that's much more biological, I think is very exciting. I also thought that the fact that Erika mentioned that they were moving into food to increase stability, especially around dairy, that must mean milk that is not consumed. I thought that was notable and also exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I loved Erika's humility and her, when we were talking about, tell us what the challenge is. Was it easy or hard? She's like, it was so hard. Are you kidding me? She talked about there was failure after failure until they got it right. And trial and error is important. Failure data is important. It helps us move forward. And I think we should have a conversation about failure now that I'm thinking about it at some point, because it's great. It's that whole Thomas Edison, it takes 10,000 prototypes to make the light bulb. I appreciated that. She's like, look, this isn't easy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of work and a lot of learning. And I think that is her advantage now. that she has learned so much. And people are going to try to do similar things as Curie Co to create these novel molecules functionality. And she has a very unique data set. So partnering with Curie Co would be a great advantage because then you can learn from them too, depending on what your partnership is. But yeah, I really like that part of it. What other takeaways you have?
So I would just note that she said the number one problem is packaging.
Mm-hmm.
And I think specifically she was talking about in the beauty, personal care, cosmetic space. And it's true. She said we need a paradigm shift there. And we've had Sway on the podcast to talk about packaging, that's specifically about the transparent plastics that are maybe in clothing containers. But there is a lot of plastic in the cosmetics industry. Plastic is ubiquitous. Didn't we just see someone who said that it costs 3 times as much to use recycled polyester than it is to use virgin polyester?
Yeah, we went to a textiles and materials event at IndieBio, and yeah, that was the big topic of conversation is the cost of upcycling and recycling. And we talked about waste to value as well. That's a whole nother conversation. We've met some great people at that event, and we'll have them on the podcast shortly to talk about packaging too, and what are the opportunities and challenges there.
Yeah, so there's a lot. What we talk about here on Grow Everything just scratches the surface of solutions that are being created. And we're here to expose more people to those solutions and also to help people get those solutions faster to the market. That's probably it for this episode. What do you think, Erum?
We have some amazing episodes coming up, so stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss. We have people that are investors, scientists, all of these amazing people now coming with the spin of applying more convergence of technology, which is something we're definitely going to point to more as people are working and doing things and having them here on the Grow Everything podcast.
Excellent. That is the pod.
That's the pod.